Welcome. This breakout session is titled In While Out, Navigating the Invisible Barriers to Reentry. If you have any questions for our presenters, please use the Q&A function on Zoom. Also, if you have any technical difficulties, please email info@mnjrc.org or text 612-361-3951. I would now like to turn it over to your presenters today. Enjoy.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you all for being here. My name is Brandy Blessed. I'm an associate professor at the Humphrey School of Public Affairs at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities campus. Today, I will be moderating a discussion between some really brilliant people. Reentry is often complicated by invisible barriers and societal stigma. And our session, Inside Out, will allow our panelists to talk about their reentry experience, share their lived experience, and also offer solutions to assist people that can help people better reintegrate back into society. More than anything, these folks are thriving despite all of the barriers that have been put before them, and I am excited for them to share their stories. So I would like to turn it over to the panelists to introduce themselves. I have a set of questions that I will be asking, but please feel free to use the chat function, or excuse me, the Q&A function, because I will be monitoring that and incorporating those questions into this discussion. And so, Ra, you're the first person that I see. Please introduce yourself, and then we'll allow everyone else to engage, and then I'll get the panel started.
Hi, good morning. My name is Ra Avis. I'm an author and blogger. I live in Long Beach, California, and my pronouns are she, her. I'll pass it to Dante.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Dante Hatcher. I am founder of Knowledge is the New Currency, also an author and student at Rutgers University, psychology student.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Paul Boyd. I'm a Rutgers University, Camden, philosophy major. I'm a junior. Born in South Jersey, lived all over the place, and now I'm here, and we'll get into all the other stuff later.
Awesome. Wally.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Wally Palmer. I'm a computer science student at Rutgers University, also by way of the New Jersey STEP program. I'm just here to share my experiences as a justice impact student, and happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you all for that. So one of the first questions that I'm really interested in is, what do you want people to know about your reentry experience? How would you describe that experience? And anyone can start us off. Wally, go first.
Sure. I'll be glad to go first. It's important for people to understand that when an individual is released from incarceration, there are no roadmaps on how to effectively maintain yourself. While incarcerated, there are literally limited to no resources on what you need to do to stay afloat out here in society. When we make our reentry, we're pretty much on our own, respectively. Even after being in a halfway house, which is considered like a community release program, little to no guidance is provided on how to survive. But let's think about the necessities of an individual being released back into the world. I mean, the reality is that over 95% of people incarcerated are eventually going to come back into society. There are far too many barriers that make it extremely difficult for ex-offenders and previously incarcerated individuals to navigate. Housing is one of the biggest barriers, in my opinion, that we face. Employment is also some may argue that employment may be the biggest, but in my opinion, housing, because it's a lot of people that I've seen that came out here and had a very difficult time finding housing. I don't think that the two are mutually exclusive. However, I've seen how much easier it is for the previously incarcerated to acquire a job as opposed to acquiring a stable living situation. I've discovered that most renters require a lot of us to live on their properties, that in order to be able to do that, we have to have good credit scores. And having a decent credit score or being able to find somebody to co-sign on a property for you is like something that is not guaranteed for the previously incarcerated community. And so these are the type of things that we are subject to and being faced with on a daily basis. And nobody prepares us for this. And so, like, that's my experience. And, you know, I don't want to take up too much time on that.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to share? Don't be shy. I know you're not shy.
Sad.
You know
I
me, I can
think
talk a lot, so I'm trying to give everybody else there.
we're all trying to give each other space here. I agree with Wally. Obviously, we have very similar experiences. I think I'm a good example of what he was talking about, where you can have excellent employment, make many more times than you need for the rent, and still have to jump through hoops to get a place to live. And I'm not even talking like a nice place or a safe place or a place, you know, close or convenient to your work or near your family, but just a place. Where I live in California, it's pretty commonplace to ask for the specific reasons or the details of your incarceration, both your time there and what brought you there, which can be a very difficult process, particularly because, you know, I'm going to speak to the women's side on this as much as possible, since I feel like the guys can hold the other part down. But the reading level in women's prisons is incredibly low. Nationwide, our reading level is 5th grade. Women's prisons is closer to 1st grade. So having to write a compelling essay in terms of what you did, how you got there, and what happened is a very big obstacle for women particularly. Also, most women kind of hold it down for their communities even prior to incarceration, no matter what was going on. And immediately upon release, those responsibilities start again. So reentry can be especially difficult because it feels like an additional burden being put on the people that have only really known you as a caretaker, and you're kind of unable to do that. And in fact, you're actually kind of bringing everybody down in that sense. You know, you do need people to co-sign. You do need people to be patient as you find a place to live. So reentry for me was very difficult, maybe more difficult than my time incarcerated, because I had a up-close experience on bringing everybody I love into this, you know. Incarceration was just me, I could handle that, but all of a sudden, you know, my mom's house is being searched and my sister is being asked to co-sign things, and kids in my life are having to deal with words they've never heard before and places they've never seen. So yeah.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate, to your point about illuminating the experiences of women, because that they're often an understudied research group, right? Or just an understudied population in general. And so the fact that you're bringing that to the forefront, I think, is really important, because yes, there are some similarities and overlap with reentry experiences, but by the time you consider the intersectional identities that people hold, those issues could be complicated even further. I want to open it up to both Paul and Dante to see if you wanted to respond to this question, or I could just move on. You let me know.
I'll respond to the question real quick, and we can move on. They basically, both of them pretty much covered, you know, the one of the main issues that we do have re-entering society. One of the biggest things I believe, though, as well, that we face re-entering society is the mental health crisis, right? There's the stigmas that's being placed on us before we even re-enter society, right? So then you're being asked to, they have these new laws and things put in place where you don't have to disclose that you've been incarcerated, but then there's pretty much no way around it, right? When you go to file for an apartment, when you go find a job, and you have this long gap in your history, they're asking you your work history, they're asking you your rental history, and you have this long gap. So it's almost like you're forced to explain it anyway, right? These stigmas that's placed on you once you are almost forced to enclose the details of your incarceration, it's almost like you got to prepare for the no. And if you don't mentally prepare yourself for that, right, which is gonna come, in abundance before you ever get a yes. In whatever aspect we're looking for in reentry, whether it's a job, whether it's housing, whether even the hiccups that we go through in enrolling in school and going through school, because some of those documents that we have to get, we can't get because we have this long gap in history from being incarcerated. So you're gonna endure a lot of no's. You're gonna endure a lot of no's. So mentally, right? You face with, can I be reentered into society? Is this my place? Right? Now you start to think of all the stigmas being placed on you from people who don't know you in society itself. Anybody who's been incarcerated, society already looks at you as you have a mark on you. You have a mark on your jacket. So now you're being frowned upon just because, regardless of the change you made, or man or woman that you are, you have a mark on you, right? That mental stability starts to shift, right? You start to stress and you start to worry about how you're gonna survive out in this world. Then we gotta factor in the recidivism rate. That's when that comes into play, because now a lot of people who can't handle the different things that they may be faced with upon reentry, it's easy for them to go back to the things that they was doing prior to incarceration, because that's all they know, or that's all they accept. That's all that will accept them. Society is not. We are being. You have these programs and you have these courses and things that you can take that can prepare you, quote unquote, say they prepare you for reentry, right? But society doesn't welcome you with open arms and say, welcome home. Here's a place to stay. Here's a job. Let's help you. Let's really, like, you're really on your own. Like, to piggyback off what Wally was saying, you're really on your own out here. You've been incarcerated for however many years, and it's like they release you into a maze. Find your way out.
Thank you for sharing
no
that.
roadmap.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that's really important. And those are the things that, like, people people who research this, they have a theory about how it's supposed to go, but you all your lived experience demonstrates that there is no bridge, right? Like, our conceptual understanding of what reentry is versus the realities of what reentry is really are illuminated by these stories. And I'm hoping that people who are in charge of these systems will really take heed to what you all are saying, because it's really important. Paul, I'm going to start with you on the next question, if that's okay. Okay. So what people and organizations did you lean on to support you when you encountered institutional or personal barriers? And so what were your sources of support? And I acknowledge that by recognizing that 3 of the panelists are associated with Rutgers University. And so that is a formal structure, but I'm curious to know, were there other informal folks that helped supported you in a way that the institutions did not?
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Well, if you guys don't mind, I just want to take a couple minutes to, I want to rewind a little bit because I want to frame a story here for you, right?
Okay.
So, I think it will behoove all of us to let people know, like, who we are in order to answer these questions, so they can kind of gauge the kind of people that are in need of these particular services. So as we were doing our bios, it just dawned on me. It's like, okay, our bio is a little bit generic. It's like, my name is this, I'm associated with this. It's not really saying much about who you are, right? And then as I listened to, the panel expound on the first question, I'm like, we have to draw people in with a story, right? Because that's what people like to hear, a story, right? That's what gets the meter moving. So let me go back a little bit. Like I said, I was born in South Jersey, right? And my origin is somewhat tragic, in that I was born out of a rape, right? And so my early years were kind of like a battleground. And I kind of, because of that, faced relentless onslaught of mental and physical abuse within the confines of my own family and beyond because of that. unspoken thing. With that came a lot of trauma, right? And trauma is one thing that I think we need to focus in on here, because this is the kind of individuals that we're all dealing with. We're dealing with people who have been impacted by trauma in such a way that even they cannot navigate out of it themselves, because who knows how to navigate out of trauma, right? There's no book on it. So needless to say, my life was very tumultuous growing up, in and out of foster care, sometimes between family, sometimes between whoever, that whole thing. But I found myself, stumbling into self-destruction as I got older because of all these unresolved issues that I brought with me into adulthood. So the unraveling in my life, kind of led me down a path where I spent over a decade in prison, and I'll be the first to tell you I was guilty of my crimes. I'm not innocent. So let's get, I take responsibility for that. But in the confines of that stark reality, I confronted the darkest recesses of my soul. Prison became my crucible, so to speak, that forced me to gaze into the mirror and kind of face the person that I hated the most, which was me, right? So within the confines of those walls, right, I found redemption. I would say a profound transformation took root, and I emerged, with a newfound faith in Christ and a commitment to truth. And now I live my life purpose-driven, right? Education, particularly higher learning, for me, became the catalyst for my enlightenment. So, and that is what, pushed me into a journey of self-discovery and an unraveling the layers of my identity, embracing the person I was meant to be. So today, the guy that you see on this panel, I stand as a beacon of resilience and redemption, fueled by my passion to break, obviously, generational curses and also build generational wealth through righteous means this time around. You know what I mean? And so I've dedicated myself to spreading light, truth, and through my, following of Christ. So I navigate this world with an unwavering commitment to authenticity and enlightenment. So with that said, I would say my mission today extends beyond just my own personal growth, but it's a journey to uplift others, offering I like to always offer my perspective, which is always steeped in unyielding truth. I stand on my truth, and I'm willing to accept the consequences for speaking the truth. So I'm okay with all that, So through my experiences, I strive to dismantle preconceptions and shatter barriers and pave the way for a future marked by empowered and enlightenment. So with that said, I really didn't have much support outside of the people that I encountered in prison. You know what I mean? My family didn't support me through prison. I didn't really have family for that. And I have tons of family, to be honest with you. It's just, we kind of my family abandons one another when one person's in trouble. We don't help each other, we leave them. So all of my support really came down to the people I built relationships with inside the prison, both staff, some correctional officers, and other prisoners. And to be honest, that only happened because I had to make the determination that I wanted to change. So my support system was actually built in prison, and that sounds odd to say, but it's the truth in my case. I didn't have anyone on the outside, and I think that's the case for most people. They don't have the support systems outside, and nor do they have the skills or capabilities to build them while they're inside, and that is a big problem.
Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing what you did about your upbringing, but also your positionality, right? Like those experiences led you to this space right here. And so definitely thank you for putting that out there, right? And for all of us to really consider the impact of like our historical trauma and how that leads us to make decisions that may not be healthy and that may lead us down a path, right? So often our conversations around prison and incarceration is the individual did a bad thing, not recognizing the systems and structures that are already in place that really create communities for us to be operating in a deficit. And so I very much appreciate that context. I'd like to open it up to anyone else who would like to have a conversation about just kind of what those supports look like. Particularly informal supports that like helped you outside of the system.
For me, my biggest support system has been education. The ability to be able to educate myself and seek education. See, I started off with self, like trying to find ways to be able to better myself academically during the period of my incarceration. But when New Jersey STEP program came along, it created a whole new aura of elevation and being able to elevate myself academically. I say that because without the decision to join New Jersey STEP, some of the resources that I have came across in the past year or so would not have been available to me. I would not have been in Princeton University doing an internship for the summer, REU computational biology internship, where I studied quantum mechanics, building quantum cascade lasers. So without the decision to, enroll as a New Jersey STEP student by way of Reentry Community College, and then becoming a Rutgers University student studying computer science. I mean, 2-3 years ago, I never even considered that I would be studying computer science. Like I went 20 years without being on a computer. So the idea of making one decision that builds on multiple decisions is a resource in and of itself, because without the decision to become a New Jersey STEP participant, I wouldn't have those resources that have been made available to me. Like even getting housing, like the apartment that I have now, that I've been in for about 3 months, because I got released from halfway house 3 months ago. Like I got that apartment by way of my navigating through spaces that were made available through the STEP program, and networking with individuals that put that opportunity in my hands. So that's a resource. And as much as I would like to contribute to individuals that helped me along the way during my incarceration and when I was ultimately released, making the decision to be a New Jersey STEP participant and seek out post-secondary education, higher education, is a resource. Like, and the more individuals that make that decision and decide to do that, the better off we are, because now we're navigating professional spaces that puts us on a whole nother stratosphere. So, I mean, in the past year, I've done things that I never considered doing a few years ago. And so making the decision to, join the STEP program. For those who aren't familiar with New Jersey STEP program, it's just New Jersey Successive Transformative Education in Prison. So it's a very good program because it provides the people that are incarcerated with the opportunity to seek higher education. And in doing that, you open up the door to other things that are unimaginable, that I wouldn't even consider doing a few years ago. And so that in and of itself is a resource that has been helpful for me.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Ra or Dante. Do you want to talk about supports?
Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I think I again will kind of echo. Earlier, Dante had mentioned the mental health of the reentry process and feeling a little lost. And I think that kind of connects to what Paul said about people inside sometimes being the anchor we need out here. Because in my world, where to speak to Paul's storyline, I had my degrees before I did time. I was married a decade. He passed away while I was inside. So when I came home, I was single, I guess. I was widowed, but to the world, I was single as an adult for the first time, living in a county I had never been to, because I couldn't parole to my home with my husband because he wasn't there anymore. And I just felt like the world was shaped differently. Time had done something to me. And so they sort of acted like I was going to be able to step right back into pace, but that's not really possible, even when you have everything lined up the way I did. Because one small change, I mean, in my case, it feels very massive, the loss of my husband, but it was just enough to completely change the trajectory. And none of the guides, I read them all. Yeah, they don't help. They're just like, this is how you get an apartment. You look for an apartment and then you ask them to have the apartments. And I'm like, it's not that easy. How do you look at somebody who is looking at you and judging you and keep your face right, and not feel like you're doing time again, right? How do you not trap yourself back in that cycle? It's almost impossible. And in my case, to have to tie that story to the loss of someone very significant to me in order for people to understand why it unraveled so hard, so fast, even harder. So I found that people in prison were I always say despite prison, but many of us inside make the choice to make the conscious choice to come out a little bit different. I feel like I am what I would call passing. I feel like if I don't tell someone I did time, they may not notice. They may not know. If you don't got to look at my record, if I don't have to check a box, I can kind of slide right through. And when I was inside, I decided I wasn't going to do that, because I saw horrible things inside. And I thought, what kind of person am I if I see these things and then walk away when I do have these structures that so many people who are down with me don't? And so even though everything fell apart right at the end, I still wanted to hold on to that theory. And so that became a big part. Unofficial structures is just the women inside. Also, just strangers in general. I have another kind of unique thread to my story in that I started a blog years before I did time, and it has a very big audience, and you never really know how those things are going to go when you disappear for years. But the strangers who were there just kind of like, I don't know, woke up one day and decided that the world could be better than it was. And if that just meant helping one person that they knew, that's what it was going to be. And so I had many hundreds of total strangers who went out of their way to make sure my incarceration journey and my reentry was as gentle as possible. And one thing that really stood out to me was how powerful the testimony of strangers is. And that kind of speaks to Wally's point about navigating new spaces. My mom can say anything she wants about me, and it just doesn't hold as much weight, despite the fact that my mom is very educated and very honest. It doesn't matter, compared to someone who's never really even met me, but has just had my back, a professional stranger in a networking type of scenario. Those are the things that got me jobs and apartments and placements. And that's just a very conscious decision from regular civilians, impacted or not. So I like to tell that piece because I think there's a lot of hope in it, in the sense that even if you're very disconnected from the system, even if you're not a parole officer or someone working within it or someone working without it as a support care facility person, you can have an impact just by deciding that when the next impacted individual comes across your life, you are going to be on their team. You're going to be on their team in whatever small way you can. Even if it's just being like, I support you. I'm not gonna be a roadblock, right? Just that conscious decision. I'm not gonna be the person that stands in this person's way. Makes an incredible difference.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So many threads to that conversation, particularly around when I listen to you all talk. One of the things that really stands out to me is this idea that you all are talking about the ways that you all support each other as justice impacted folks, but how you all are serving. You're being supported, but also supporting, right? And so you all are creating community amongst each other to navigate very difficult spaces, because you all recognize and understand what it is and what those challenges are, right? Like, so while, for example, I may want to be a support and try to be, I still don't understand the nuance of what your experience is, because that isn't my experience and I'm not familiar with it. And so what you're highlighting for many of us is this idea that there's refuge in people supporting each other with lived experience, and the ways for which those structures, actually those informal networks or structures, become the things that sustain you and actually propel you into different aspects of your life. Dante, I want to turn it over to you if you have anything to add here.
Most definitely. Thank you, Brandy. So while I was listening to my brothers and my sisters speak, right, I was thinking, like, what really is a resource, a helpful resource, right? And as I listened to them all speak and share, I came to the terms of myself, like, a resource is actually what we make it. A resource only becomes a resource depending on how we take it in and formulate it. And I thought about it. What has been a great resource for me? And honestly, I think the greatest resource that I've had in the last 15 years was the Department of Corrections, the prison system itself, right? So, and I say that because just like my brothers and sisters, I found solace with, you know, newfound brothers that I have, and we've held each other up. You know, I found, you know, I had an officer who was my mentor, like my first 6 years throughout the prison system. For my first 5 years, I lost somebody. My mother, my grandmother, my father, everything that I had outside the world before incarceration was gone. Right? For a support system. For most people, I've seen some of my brothers like break, been every type of way, and break, not being able to handle it, right? So for me, it wasn't the attitude that I was better than you. It wasn't that I'm something different, because I looked at all my brothers and realized that we all are the same. We are going through this traumatic experience together, right? So I gained strength from it. From everything that I lost, everything that was taken from me, everything that was stripped from me, I figured I had one or two options, right? Either I could rise up above all of this and be something greater than what I was, be something greater than what I'm viewed as, or I can crumble into ashes and be exactly who they think I am, and be the animal that they view when they close that cage every night. I can crumble and be that. So my greatest resource was the system itself, that every day I woke up and I went to the class within the NJ Step program and told them, you know, I'm gonna do something greater than what my past defined me as. For every officer that I walked by with my books in my hand that snarled at me, and I graduated my first degree, top of my class, and I was humiliated for it. I was humiliated for it. I was told, you ain't nothing. You spending our taxpayers' money that can go to our kids in this world who really gonna do. I was humiliated for doing something better for me. That was my greatest resource. Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. You told me I couldn't. You told me I don't not. You didn't just tell me I couldn't do it. You told me I don't deserve it. That gave me strength. To this day, I tell people, I am my best when my back is against the wall. You put me in a place where I have nowhere to go and I have to stand up and fight. That's when I'm at my best. So my greatest resource has been this system that I've been subjected to for the last 13 and a half years. This has been my greatest resource because it made me and molded me into the man that I am now. Now I am, I am fearless. You're not gonna take nothing from me. You're not gonna stop me from getting what I deserve.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I guess we don't have time to go into it, but I just want to I just want to acknowledge the fact that you're pointing out DOC as the motivator for you to be a changed man. And it's not lost on me that what would our society be if we actually had those structures in place to motivate, to support, to sustain you before incarceration even becomes a thing, right?
Exactly.
So that the DOC isn't the change agent. It's like your life outside of that system, of these structures, could really be fulfilling and allow you to self-actualize before even engaging in crime or violence or whatever, right? Like it's one of those things that when you said that, like it was like many people would find that to be like counterproductive or counterintuitive. But thank you for sharing that. But I always want us to think about like what would happen if we had a society where we gave people what they need in the beginning to heal, to be supported, to self-actualize.
Give help before you need it.
Absolutely. So I have one last question before I open it up to the audience. And so audience members, please continue or please populate questions because we could talk. We don't, so. So what I want to ask is, if you were in charge of reentry, right? And you all have really talked about what some of those challenges are. If you were in charge of reentry, what would you do to make this process better, seamless, more supportive?
Oh man.
I started off because I'm gonna be quick. For me, it's real simple, right? If I was in charge of reentry, I would want to build a structure around those who are who us. We would build this structure. We are the ones who know what we need. We know the experience and the hardships that it takes to get through, to get through. We need the barriers that we face. Nobody understands like we understand, right? So I would want to build a structure of men and women who've been through the same experience that we've been through. Because when I come out and I've been on these phone calls and these interviews and I'm being told, well, yeah, we have services to help you in reentry. You really can't help me if you've never been through the situation I've been through. You don't know what it is I've been through mentally, physically, emotionally, and none of that. And I'm not saying anybody have to have empathy for me, but we're talking about resources. We talking about lending a helping hand. We talking about helping people reintegrate into society, right? After incarceration. Who better than to do so than people who were formerly incarcerated? So if I was to restructure and reframe it, I would do so and build it from the ground up with those who were formerly incarcerated.
I love that. Other folks have ideas?
Yeah, when you sent us this question last night, right? My logical brain, because that's how I am. Immediately I started going to the numbers, and I'm like, I wanted to put together a presentation because yesterday I'm like, let's just stick organic, right? But then I calmed down and my mind settled a little bit. So I thought about this quote from Einstein. He said, "Logic will get you from A to B, right? But only imagination will take you everywhere, right?" And when I thought about that, I'm like, we have to rethink completely. Like this has to be an out of the box thinking when you think about reentry, because first and foremost, reentry, given that a person doesn't have 15,000 life sentences, right? It starts day one, in my opinion. That's where it should begin, day one. And the reason why is because after experiencing the reentry process the way I have, backstory, I am still in the halfway house. So I still have to navigate through that with those restrictions still being placed upon me. But I do what I can do. And that's just the way it is. And it's funny that being in a halfway house sometimes, the place is supposed to be there to help you rebuild your life, right? That's the idea of it. But yet, going back to what Wally said, there's so many barriers that they place, on you to obstruct you along the way. And it's not even sometimes intentional. It's just a person being a person, not feeling like doing their job today. And, if that person doesn't feel like doing their job today, it's something as simple as writing you a pass to go to an appointment that you had previously scheduled 2 weeks ago and you got clearance for a month ago, because that's how long it takes to get things done, right? If that person doesn't feel like correcting an error or something, maybe they forgot to put it in because they're having a bad day, or they don't come to work because there's no accountability for that, then you now have to start that process all over again, So for me, it starts day one. And the funny thing about reentry is, right, like just how, because Wally was with me in this, society is moving fast, right? But the reentry process is very slow. The things we have to go through and the systems that are in place, they operate very slowly. For a person to get housing, I watch Wally go through this, and this is where I get this, this is where I get this insight from. How long it took him just to get a meeting with someone to get housing, to help him even start the process to get housing. That took months. And then, it's still not really settled. I mean, he'll tell you that, but he's still in the process and he's already home. Thank God, he was able to navigate to get something out of the nothing that was given to him. You know what I mean? But like I said, going back, stay on point. It should start day one, and what that looks like is we have to realize that it's people in control of reentry. It's people that need the reentry, right? So what do we know about people that need reentry, right? One, everyone's not going to be on board with their own reentry because sometimes they don't know that they need reentry and they don't know that something's wrong with them. So we have to get to the point where first we have to start helping individuals realize that they need help and that something is wrong with them. That's part one, and that will go to what Dante was speaking about with mental health being something that needs to be brought back into this system, because in Jersey it's been taken out. I don't know if people know that or not. Like you don't get one-on-one group therapy. You don't get the help of professionals. You get the help of, no disrespect to any of these social workers out there, but that is who are our counselors when we're inside for mental health. We have social workers, counseling us and basically diagnosing us. And I don't believe that they're qualified to do that. Like I said, no disrespect to the social workers, because they do a lot, along with all the other things that they have to do, right? So that's one. And two, you have to get an individual to realize that they need to change, and then the system itself has to realize that it needs to change because it's so used to operating in its archaic ways. It's like everything operates off of numbers, and the statistics and all that stuff will only get you so far. You know what I mean? And I think we're being bogged down in our today's world by being over analytical of these things and just strictly adhering to numbers, rather than you literally just have to really put people who want to do these jobs, first of all, and who are qualified to do these jobs, and then incentivize them some way to do the job. And I also agree with Dante. You need to have people who have formerly incarcerated stepping into these positions of leadership if they were, if they're choosing to do so. So I think that would be a big help too.
Thank you so much. Wally, would you like to offer any insights about if you were in charge of reentry? Are there different things that you would add to that list?
First and foremost, I would restructure all these halfway houses because
There you go.
with these halfway houses is a major problem. In New Jersey specifically, is a major problem with these halfway houses. I would first incentivize individuals that previously incarcerated. I would incentivize them to seek out higher education because it's available, but they don't make it seem as if it's available, and they don't incentivize you for doing so. I will provide different avenues and outlets that are necessary to get individuals that are in these halfway houses driver's license. Because you can go out there in the world and there's so many different things that you could take on and become a part of. If you ain't got a driver's license, you can't do that. You can't navigate certain spaces. You can't get from point A to point B without a driver's license. And you can't do so many things without a driver's license. You're basically an alien. So these halfway houses don't support that type of structure. I would put other things in these halfway houses, like giving residents the opportunity to establish a line of credit. Like if you coming out here in the world and you have no credit, you've never had credit ever, like you're not going to be recognized. You're going to be an alien. They're going to be like, who's you? The first time I tried to check for my credit and go to Experian and punch in my numbers, my social security numbers, my information, all those things, it said, oops, something went wrong. Like, who are you? I'm an alien. So I came out here into this world completely alienated from society. And it's obvious that incarceration is meant to do that. It's meant to alienate you. But we can't talk about reentry if we're not talking about eliminating these things when you're coming out here. Okay, I get it when you're incarcerated, but if I'm coming back out into society, these things had to be made available. That's the whole point of going to a residential community release program, to make sure that these things are made available. Make sure that you're being given the opportunity to seek out higher education. Make sure that you're being given the opportunity to seek out employment that's going to be the type of employment that's actually going to get you somewhere. Not see, because in these halfway houses, they basically like incentivize you to take on like fast food type jobs and stuff like that. Something that is over the counter, flipping burgers and things like that. When you try to get jobs that you're making more money than what they're making there at the halfway house, they're totally against that. They'll find some way to screw you over and make sure you don't get this job because you're going to be making almost double they're making. And so having these things in place, like providing individuals with the opportunity to get real jobs, to seek out education, to establish a line of credit, to get a driver's license, even a state ID. When I was released, I had no state ID, none of that. Like I said, I was a complete alien out here in the world doing things on my own. So these are some of the things that are required in order to put people in position to succeed out here in the community. Because if we don't have these things made available to us, we may seek other alternatives. And you don't want individuals to go out there and seek other alternatives to surviving. We need to put them in position to already be successful upon the release from these particular halfway houses. And so that would be like my first thing, like restructuring these halfway houses. Another thing.
Wait. I want to give, so we only have like 11 minutes left.
Okay.
I want to give Ra an opportunity to respond to this question if she's interested.
Sure.
And then before we
I have to go off on the deep end.
But just to contextualize, so I'm going to give Ra an opportunity, and then I'll give you all in a lightning round a kind of an opportunity to drop the mic before we leave. Okay, so Ra, go for it.
I would just add, a means for strangers to get involved. But everything else exactly spot on, you know, formerly incarcerated people involved in the process. If you don't know, how are you going to help? Day one reentry, of course, fixing up these places that we come back to, not just halfway houses, but parole. And I definitely want to emphasize how possible all those things are. All of these things are happening around the United States already. They exist, they're in place. In California, you get a driver's license on day one. There's no reason for that not to happen across the nation. We have the policy, we have the legislation, share it, you know. Reentry on day one happens in some Pacific Northwest states, you know, where that's part of the training, part of the interviews and things. Formerly incarcerated people are involved in Chicago's reentry process. So nothing we're saying here is like dramatic and imaginatory. It exists. It already exists. It's just not available to all of us because we're not considered a unit. But I would also say that there's a lot of opportunities for strangers to be involved while we're incarcerated, like letter writing and things like that. And once you get home, there's really none in place. Like I've been home 8 years now. So I definitely have the capacity to meet someone for coffee, you know, once a week or check in and stuff. And there's no real way to connect if it's not through the girls I did time with. So yes, it's possible and people can be more involved than they think they can. And I'm sure we can create structures for that.
Awesome. Thank you. So we have a comment in the chat from Kristen. She says, Wally, thank you. The man I mentor just moved out of the halfway house last week and has said everything in caps that you just said. It's been so frustrating to him, for him, and we need to set people up for success. So thank you all for being here today. And so thank you, Kristen, for that comment and for engaging with the panel. I want to be respectful because I know that we will need to end soon. So I just want to do a lightning round. I want to give you an opportunity to drop the mic. So anything you want to share as last words, or even talk about the ways that you continue to thrive or have found joy despite kind of what these experiences have been. And so I'm going to just kind of go back in the order that I see. So we'll go Ra, Paul, Dante, and then Wally.
I did not think about my answer here, but I think I'm just going to say we still find joy. I hope you can see that. If anything, when you gather a group of formerly incarcerated people together, we're smiling, we're figuring it out, and we continue to figure it out. And I hope that image stays in people's minds. So when they think about someone incarcerated, they think of people like us, because it is people like us. And to Paul's original point, most of us come home, you know, we're going to reintegrate, and you can be as much a part of that process as you want to be. There's no systems in place, which is kind of exciting because it means you can build them and you can be part of that as well. And I'm very, very grateful for everyone who has done that for my life and allowed me to continue to be creative and present in my community.
Thank you so much, Paul.
I just have a little statement and I'll just give it over. This will leave some people think with something I wrote out before last night. If you build your whole life on a certain idea and it becomes theory and then philosophy and then doctrine and then a belief system and then finally a way of life and a mentality, you will not know that you have basically built your life on a lie. For you, it is not a lie, it's the truth. And you will strongly defend even your misconceptions, right? So, like what Roger said, and the idea behind that is we have to look at the structures of everything that are in play or in place, I should say, and rethink how we build our structures that are meant to help people reintegrate and also be habilitated as well while they're inside, because the habilitation process is another thing that we didn't really get to speak about, but that thing. So I don't want to take up too much time, so I can go forever on this one. But I'll leave you with a quote, another good quote from a former mentor of mine that she passed away while I was in prison. She said, "My limitations will be my invitation to greatness." And like as Wally pointed out, you know, when you're in these halfway houses, I am still in one. The irony of being in the halfway house that I am in is that I have to do everything illegally for myself in order to legally prepare myself to come home. So that should not be the reality.
That could be a whole webinar in and of itself, but we're just going to stop that right there. Dante.
I'll close out saying this to everyone here, and to everyone watching, to everyone in the world who has supported my my change, my future, right? My purpose, the life that I live now. I appreciate you. I love you all. To everyone who has frowned upon me and stand against me, who told me I couldn't do it, you're not the writer of my story. You'll never define the man that I am. My past can't define the man that I am. I'm a man of purpose, and I'm a man with a strong will, and I will I will live a life of purpose. Prison has not broken me. I'm just under construction. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much, Dante. Wally.
Yeah, in closing, I just want to say, like, how I envision, like, reimagining justice, the whole reimagination, like keeping the discussion alive and keeping it going. The discussion we're having here today, but not just keeping it alive, but thrusting it to the assembly floor, but thrusting it into the Senate floor and into these political settings. Because in order for change to really take place, that's where it has to happen at, because that is the battleground, because that's where it happens for us to be in positions that we are in today. And so in order for these like halfway houses to be put in a situation where they have to change, legislation has to change. They have to be forced to do it. And not only that, but the resources that people need that are coming home has to change. And in order for that to change, legislation has to change, and it has to start on the political floor.
Thank you so much. In the chat, Anne said, thank you all for your truth. And so I just want to echo that. Every time I'm engaging in any type of conversation with you all, I learn so much. You all let me know, right, that there's still more to be done, and that work needs to happen from your truth, from your lived experience, and from your expertise. And so I really hope that I know that you shed some light on many of these issues for folks that may not be proximate to the issue, may not know folks who are justice impacted, but really, really grateful for the time that you all spent today to share your insight and wisdom with us. I'd like to bring Fernando in, who's going to close out our session and get you all prepared, or get the audience prepared for the next round of conversations. But virtual applause to the panelists. You all were amazing, and thank you also for being up so early on a Friday morning.
Thank you. Thank you.